Business is definitely starting right now with Nigel Farage, the UKIP leader, who joins me in the studio. Thank you very much for your time.
Good morning.
Good morning. Well,
it's your kingdom, I hear, from the
yes,
intro.
I'm not convinced about kingdom because I'm holding out for Empress, Nigel. I really am. King, Queen's rubbish. Now, look, 3 months today to the EU referendum. It's questionable whether even people like me and you... Now, let's be honest, this isn't the BBC, I could be honest. I'm a staunch Eurosceptic, as you are. Absolutely support that. It doesn't necessarily mean you and I agree on everything. Let's be certain about that. But we've had many off-air rows, I'm sure people will gather. But do you think that the people of Britain are ready for another 3 months of this campaign?
It's a lot, isn't it? It's a very, very long time. The referendum was announced. I think Cameron was really shocked. He was shocked about Boris. He was shocked about Michael Gove. Shocked that 140 of his own... his party's split down the middle. So he decided to come out with this sort of, literally firing every bullet he had. Everything he had, he was thrown at this in the first few weeks. And so what could have been a gentle intro has actually started off at a frenetic pace. I worry that people will get bored if it goes on and on and on. And I particularly think, I have to say this, that the negativity that we hear from Cameron, from Clegg, from Mandelson, from all the people on the front line of the Remain campaign, they keep telling us the sky will fall in. We can't possibly cope on our own. And I think that's going to bore people. And you know what? I think that we will warn people about open borders and terrorism and things like that. But basically, our message is the sunny, optimistic one, which is that we can govern ourselves, trade with the world. And I think in a very long campaign, us having optimism will help us.
But there is a big elephant in the room today after the Brussels attacks, which we're talking about later and spent much of yesterday talking about. And there have been some claims made, people saying, look, the Brussels attacks proves that Britain is not safer in Europe. Now, the reaction to that has been, that's tasteless, that's tacky. I've seen some tweets from you today about that. We had a guest on yesterday mentioning that. Is it just tacky? Is it political game playing to use the deaths of more than 30 people in that way for a political campaign?
Well, that's what the pro-EU side have done. They've all done it. Cameron has said this must make us consolidate our European values. Hollande said this is an attack on the whole of the European Union. And we will hear next week in Brussels calls for deeper integration. The closer we are together, the less the chance there is of this sort of thing happening. So the other side politicise every single event. They politicise Holocaust Day. They politicise the 11th of November. They politicise everything in the name of building their European state with their wretched flag and anthem that most of us don't want. Our side of the argument, Paris was a shock. It was a big shock. And I wasn't criticised. Nobody was criticised. We basically said nothing for 48 hours. But Brussels, what happened yesterday, and it was awful. And undoubtedly, I will know some of those people who were either killed or injured.
Because, of course, one of the metro station that was attacked just half a kilometre from the European Parliament building.
From the European Parliament, and I've worked there for years. I'm bound to know some of those people. But the one thing it wasn't yesterday was a shock. We've been expecting it for months. We know that Brussels, frankly, is now the jihadi capital of Europe. We know there is a complete state of lawlessness in that city. And I think, from our point of view, it is utterly and entirely justifiable to repeat what I said the week after Paris, namely that this Schengen, this free movement zone, is a lovely idea when everything's hunky-dory. But in reality, the free movement of people has become the free movement of terrorists, criminal gangs and Kalashnikovs.
But if these are Belgians born and bred, in the same way that, the Paris attacks, yes, they were French and they were also Belgian. 7/7, they were British born and bred. Again and again, these attacks are carried out. Lee Rigby, British born and bred. These people aren't coming from over there, from elsewhere. They're in our countries right now. So what's that got to do with Schengen?
There are two distinct problems here. One is the problem we have already, which is a failure of politicians, a failure of prime ministers, a failure of home secretaries. We've had an open-door immigration policy. We've allowed too many people in too quickly. They haven't integrated. We've effectively seen ghettos developing in some of our cities in Britain and Brussels and Paris and elsewhere. And it's in that environment of immigrant communities not doing well that I'm afraid this new jihadist mentality has taken hold. That's problem number one. So you're quite right. We have a problem anyway. But why would you compound that problem? As Chancellor Merkel did last year, by saying to countless millions, please come, we can accommodate you. The boss of Europol said just 2 weeks ago, he thinks that up to 5,000 jihadi terrorists have now come into Europe in the course of the last 18 months posing as migrants. So why would you add to a problem that you've already got? And I'll say a third thing, which is this. you know, those young men that we saw outside Cologne train station on New Year's Eve, you know, sexually molesting women in open public view, whether it's that problem, whether it's the bombing problem. Remember, all of those people that came into Germany last year, within a few short years, will have German passports, namely EU passports, and be able to come to this country. And I think plain common sense tells you that we can't completely isolate or insulate ourselves from terrorist risk, but we can reduce it by taking back control of our borders.
Every terror expert I spoke to yesterday was saying we are actually much safer. We don't have access to the same amount of weaponry, bomb making, and because we're not in Schengen, because we do have better, certainly not 100% secure border controls. We are more secure. But in terms of our actual security, would you say that leaving the EU after the 23rd of June will actually make us safer?
Yes, because we will be in control of our borders. You know, people will not.
But we already have passport control. We already have.
Yeah, the only difference between us and Schengen is in Schengen you don't have to show a passport. Here you have to show a passport.
But you can still walk in.
If you're a convicted murderer from any other part of the European Union, you can still walk into this country by just showing your passport, and there's nothing to stop. You know, and I would like us to have proper border controls. And as I say, it isn't a perfect solution; it's an imperfect world. But would it put us in a better position? You bet your life it would.
Let's talk about other major events in the last week. Obviously, George Osborne fighting for his political life yesterday. Probably, in a certain extent, you know, good day to bury bad news. And that awful, awful phrase from many years ago that actually he's been sort of saved, perhaps his political career saved by the horrible, horrific events in Brussels.
Well,
but we've had other major events, obviously precipitating that. Ian Duncan-Smith's resignation. Now, he's a firm Eurosceptic as well, the former Work and Pensions Secretary. Has his loss from the cabinet, the oomph that he's got as a senior member of the cabinet, has that damaged the Brexit campaign?
No, quite the reverse. I shared a platform last Tuesday at the London Palladium. I've appeared at the London Palladium. My mum's really pleased, you know.
Finally, Mrs Farage is proud. Finally, after all these years.
Yeah, well, not much else she's proud of. But no, so I did this big debate last week, big Brexit debate, and I was up against Nick Clegg, up against Alan Johnson from the Labour Party, and I was on with a Conservative minister. And you know, she was very well versed with the arguments and the debates, but she's a current serving minister. And what that means is she has to be really nice about the Prime Minister. She has to say that the renegotiation, he tried tremendously hard and did his best for the country. And frankly, this blue-on-blue debate, where Cabinet Minister debates Cabinet Minister along the lines of Queensberry rules, we can't have a proper debate like that. Now IDS is outside the tent. He can say what the hell he likes. I think it's good news for the Brexit campaign.
And in terms of people saying what the hell they like, we've heard a lot. We were just talking about security issues. What's going to win it for the referendum? Because I've seen some very interesting polling suggesting that, you know, you've got your hardly people like me and you who are just going to vote to leave no matter, you know, well, not no matter what. I started out as a Europhile until I actually learned about what was really going on and how much power the EU had over my democracy that I live in. But in terms of people who are on the Remain side, who are hard Remains, they're going to vote Remain no matter, and people are going to vote Leave no matter. And then there's this massive big bunch, probably the normal people, let's be honest, in the middle, who don't pay much attention to politics. They're soft Remain or soft Leave. How are you going to win those votes? Is it going to be about security and terrorism? Is it going to be about the economy? Is it going to be about immigration? What's the key factor?
Oh, the key factor will be it's about us controlling our country, controlling our destiny, and the big subset of that is open-door immigration. The fact that we've got immigration to Britain running at 10 times what it did for most of the post-war period. We have no control. The British passport is now effectively open to 508 million people. We've seen wages driven down. We've got a crisis in our primary schools, healthcare provision, let alone the security aspects we touched on just earlier. So I think it is about that. And you're right. There are, you know, a number of people who want to vote out, and they believe, as I've believed for years, that it's wrong for Britain. Actually, it's wrong for Europe too, is what we also believe. And you've got those that want to stay in, you know, Goldman Sachs, big businesses that like paying cheap wages, and politicians. And you've got this lump in the middle, 1 in 4, maybe even 1 in 3, undecided. What are the key issues that will move them? The polling is absolutely clear that actually immigration and security, you know, over a third of those who haven't yet made their mind up say that is the issue on which they will
But aren't they worried after a lot of scaremongering that's been going on? We've talked about Project Fear a lot, about losing jobs. There's 3 million jobs dependent on the EU figure Nick Clegg banded around, which then became jobs that could be lost. We heard only this week claims that 1 million jobs could be lost. Now, I've not met any reputable knowledgeable person on this who thinks that any of these figures are true.
No.
But they're very damaging to your campaign.
Well, Clegg's tried that with me in 2014 when I did 2 one-hour public televised debates against Clegg in 2014, and he kept pumping the 3 million jobs line, and I kept saying, look, this is baloney. Because if 3 million British jobs are linked in trade with the EU, there are 5 million jobs in the EU linked with trade to Britain, because just have a look on the street. See how many German motor cars there are. See how much French wine is sold in pubs and restaurants and bars. And yeah, well, absolutely.
Yeah, I've got a German car and French wine.
Well, there you are.
Yes.
Well,
is your argument, look, they need us as much as we need you?
They need us far more than we need them. The economics of it are quite startling, actually. The trade deficit between Britain and the EU is about £60 billion. Remember, the Eurozone's on its back. There's almost no growth across most of Europe. So we will go on buying and selling goods from each other, and I don't believe a single job will be threatened. Actually, I think we'll have the opportunity to deregulate and create more.
What happens to UKIP and to you on June the 24th? Let's go in the scenario. There's a vote to leave. Right now, the polls are incredibly close. We hear the Prime Minister's getting quite anxious that it's closer than he thought it would be. He thought it would be a walkover. Let's say we vote to leave. We don't need you anymore, do we?
Do you know what? The Danes voted against the Maastricht Treaty 25 years ago to basically be ratted on by their government and forced to vote again. Twice the Irish have voted against European treaties, only to be forced to get another deal and to vote again. And the French and Dutch vetoed the European Constitution to have it replaced with the Lisbon Treaty. Would I trust Dave and George, after Britain's voted to leave, and say, right, that's it, we're going to pack up UKIP, there'll be no pressure on you at all, off you go, chaps, and negotiate our divorce? Would I trust them to do that? You must be joking.
Absolutely, it's questionable whether David Cameron does have negotiation ability, given the deal in inverted commas he got.
He should have asked the Turks to negotiate for him. They're doing very well out of the European Union. Every time there's a summit, they get €3 billion more. No, look, if we vote to leave, and I pray we do, because it is a once in a lifetime chance. If we take this opportunity, great. If we don't, I doubt we'll ever get it again.
That's what the SNP said.
No, I really do. I really, really do. I very much doubt. I mean, don't forget, the establishment have given us this referendum through gritted teeth. It's only because of the rise of UKIP and perhaps some of my sheer bloody-mindedness over many years that we've got this referendum. If we vote to leave, we have to make sure that the British government fulfills the will of the people, and UKIP's role in that will be very, very important indeed.
Okay, let's say we vote to remain. Will there be any point in you carrying on as UKIP leader and UKIP carrying on?
I'll tell you the irony of that if what I cared about was UKIP and a career in politics, I'd like to lose the referendum by about 2%. There would be millions of Labour and Conservatives who'd voted in this referendum to leave, who believed that Cameron had lied to the public, that Corbyn, well, goodness knows what they think about Corbyn, but, and actually, we saw this with the SNP. They narrowly lost an election, but they found that all the voters for separation from England had become SNP voters. If UKIP is to become a major, major party in British politics and get up and challenge the Labour Party for second position, losing narrowly would be the best thing. It's not what I want.
He hastened to add.
No, it's not what I want. Julia, I had a proper job for 20 years. I used to come into London every day and work hard all morning. And we'll go to the pub at lunchtime, but anyway. But the point is, I came into politics from business. I made a big sacrifice to do this because I believe this country should be independent. I want to win this referendum.
You talk about big sacrifice, but a lot of people will think this is about your ego, and that particularly plays into the war that is going on, not just inside UKIP, but also between the different Leave camps. Let's first of all take on the war inside UKIP. You have described your only UKIP MEP as a completely irrelevant, a waste of space, completely irrelevant. And Suzanne Evans, your former deputy, someone who after the elections last year, you actually said was going to be the next leader of UKIP. She's now effectively ditched from the party hierarchy entirely.
I never said she'd be the next leader, but look, I have got, no I didn't, I have got amongst a couple of dozen MEPs, amongst hundreds of councillors, amongst our members of the House of Lords, amongst our ruling, councils, I have got a most incredible level of support in UKIP. We have an MP who takes a different view on the world and a different view on politics than I do. And he chooses he chooses in this referendum campaign to go with one particular group. We choose as a party to go elsewhere. So I said he's irrelevant to our referendum campaign because we'll do it without him.
OK, but you are part of the Leave.eu campaign.
Well, what happened here was there were two groups that emerged, Vote Leave and Leave.eu, and then Go came through the middle. Go with its extraordinary black and green ties, and Go
selling like hotcakes, people. Selling like hotcakes.
And Go is the umbrella group supported by Leave.eu, supported by UKIP, supported by the Democracy Movement. There are 15 different groups and parties supporting Go. Why do I support that campaign? Because I believe we've got to reach out across the right and left of British politics in this referendum. And the Vote Leave crowd, yes, they've got all the cabinet ministers, but they're an SW1 establishment-based organisation. I'm out next week. I'll be speaking in Newport next Tuesday night. I'll be speaking in Essex next Wednesday night. And we're taking this campaign out to the country.
But come on, you keep talking. You've mentioned the establishment a couple of times now. Lots of people are going to be going guffawing, going, hold on a minute, you're an ex-public school boy who worked in the city, talking about the establishment. You're part of the establishment, Nigel.
I tell you what, I'm 1,000 miles away from being part of the establishment. I think politics in Britain needs radical change. I think we've been appallingly led by people who all go to the same university, who never have a job in the real world. They're career politicians. They care more about their careers than they care about principle or the country.
But at the end of the day, Eurosceptics like me, and there'll be a lot of people tuning into this. We've been tweeting out, putting online that you're going to be on. People like me, Eurosceptics, I want us to win this referendum. In a few weeks' time, Ofcom rules, I'm not allowed to say that. But right now, I'm allowed to say it. Okay, it's something I feel very passionately about. I think it'll be really vital for our country. However, we've got a load of egos and battles going on in the different Leave camps. And a lot of people like me are getting very frustrated that you've got the Britain Stronger in Europe campaign, and we're going to be talking to them after 10:30. And they're united and they're going forward with this very strong campaign. And meanwhile, all we've got is infighting on the Eurosceptic camp. Isn't it time? You've got your act together, put egos aside and put the country first.
That's baloney. Because Nicola Sturgeon has said she doesn't want the Prime Minister going north of the border and she supports Remain. The Labour Party, Hilary Benn said he wouldn't share a platform with any other party. So they're more split than we are. On our side of it, I have said, Julia, for 6 months, I will work with anybody. I've even shared a platform with figures way on the left of British politics. People, hard left trade unionists, George Galloway, and people on the right. I will work with anybody. There's a group of Conservatives in SW1 who won't work with me. But you know what?
Why not?
Because I think they view me as a member of the lower orders as far as they're concerned.
Really, they think you're a bit of an oik?
Absolutely.
Uppity oik?
And they don't like Aaron Banks, the entrepreneur who's behind Leave.eu. And they're more worried about the Conservative Party after the referendum than winning this referendum. I couldn't give a damn about the Conservative Party or Labour or, frankly, UKIP. I care about winning this referendum.
Let's talk about the Prime Minister. You say you don't give a damn about the David Cameron, but can he survive the EU referendum? I've been hearing that even Remain supporters in the Tory camp are now worried that he can't survive, especially after the fiasco over the budget with George Osborne and Ian Duncan-Smith. But can he certainly survive a Leave vote?
Well, I think he and George Osborne are joined at the hip. They've been a remarkable double act in politics. We've never been able to put a cigarette paper between them, unlike, of course, Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. And I think that Cameron's days are numbered, and Osborne's too.